So, I am the first reporter of Group 10. My name is Adrian James Oparan. So now I will be discussing the sharing the Earth's resources. But before that, may I ask a question first. So, Mr. Dio, can you imagine what it feels like to live without enough food, education, or healthcare? Why?
Because ever since we were born now, we have resources like food, shelter, clothes. Dili na ako ma-imagine ka to na may world na yun.
So, in short, this is diba? So, the world has many riches and resources, but millions of people still live in extreme poverty. This unfair sharing of resources shows the needs of the country to work together and care for others. So everyone can have a better access of basic needs of life such as water, shelter, food, education, and healthcare. Even though the world has many riches and resources, still many people live in extreme poverty. According to the Human Development Report of 2003, the total world's population is about 6 billion people. Yet, according to the poverty statistics, approximately 1.2 billion people survive on less than $1 a day. Means, meeting their daily basic needs of life is a daily struggle. According to FAO, or the Food and Agriculture Organization, around 925 million of people are undernourished, means lacking of sufficient food to lead their healthy lives. And around 114 million children of primary school age are not enrolled. It means limiting their dreams and future opportunities. According to UN Millennium Project of 2002 to 2006, around 2.6 billion people are lack of access and proper sanitation. And around 1 billion people are relying on unsafe drinking water sources, exposing them to preventable diseases. According to UNICEF 2005, as a result of 30,000 children under 5 die each day because of property-related process. And over 500,000 women die each year because of pregnancy and childbirth. Because they cannot access a proper health care, highlighting the severe inequality in access of essential services. In Philippines, poverty is also a significant issue. In total, about 4.7 million families, or 26.9% of the population in 2006, were considered poor. A family of 5 needed at least 6,274 per month to cover their basic needs of life, such as food, shelter, and clothing. In total, around 27.6 million Filipinos were living in poverty, showing that a large portion of the population struggle to survive. This situation reflects a broader problem. Meanwhile, some people have more than income, wealth, and resources. Many others are left behind, and the world's resources are inequality, leading to social and economical inequality. So now, let's proceed to the tragic gap. Many people around the world live in poverty, struggling to meet their basic needs of life, and at the same time, small portion of number of people enjoying wealth and resources. For example, according to Milagro May 2002, cited by the Human Development Report of 2003, the richest 5% of the world's population receives 114 times more than income of the poorest 5%, and the 1% earn as much as the poorest 57%. In simple words, A small group of very rich people has the most of the world's money, while a large number of people shares only a small part of it. Next, let's proceed to the Human Development Report of 2002. According to Human Development Report of 2002, the United States has 25 million of the richest Americans and have as much as the almost 2 billion of the world's poorest people. The combined wealth of the world's 200 richest people is around $1 trillion. While the 582 million people in 43 least developed countries shares only $146 billion. In simple words, a few very rich people have more money than hundreds of millions of poor people combined, which shows extreme inequality in how wealth is distributed globally. In World Bank 1999 states that the developing countries spends around $13 on debt repayment for every $1 it receives in grants. In simple words, the developing country, instead of getting richer from the help they receive, developing countries end up losing more money. Why? Because of debt payment. It makes them hard to grow and improve their economy because of debt payment. And now let's proceed to the Philippine situation. This tragic gap also exists in our country. For example, in Sulu province in Mindanao, the poverty rate is 88.8%. Meanwhile, the Metro Manila has a 4.3%. These are the big gap difference between the two places. In simple words, people in some provinces struggle just to meet their basic needs of life. Meanwhile, the big countries, the big cities rather, like Manila, have more opportunities and better standard of living. This shows that poverty and wealth are not evenly spread across the Philippines. Now let's proceed to the life expectancy. In Metro Manila, the life expectancy here is 69.2 years, meanwhile in Sulu is 52.23 years. In simple words, people in rich area live longer because they have better access of basic needs of life such as hospital, food, education, and healthcare. Meanwhile, the people in poorer areas face harder living conditions that makes their lives shorter. And now the last is the high school graduate percentage. In Metro Manila, the high school graduate percentage is 74.3%, while in Sulu is 18.1%. In simple words, students in big cities have better access to education, schools, and learning resources, while students in poorer provinces struggle to finish schools because of poverty, lack of schools, and other challenges. Because of this, it is not surprising that Sulu is one of the most conflicted area or one of the most affected area in terms of poverty. In summary, people in Manila have better access to education, healthcare, and resources. Meanwhile, in Sulu, continue face-to-face poverty and fewer opportunities. This is what we call the regional inequality, the unfair difference of living between two regions. In conclusion, the tragic gap reminds us that inequality is not only about money, it is also about life-changing, education, and opportunities. We must work all together and build a fair system where everyone's basic needs of life is met and no one is left behind. That's all my report in history.
the continuation of sharing the Earth's resources and the last topics about the promise of economic globalization and challenging economic inequity at the global level and national levels. So, Mr. Politico, what comes to your mind when you read the word globalization?
For me, so when we say globalization is interconnectedness of countries or regions.
Alright. So, economic globalization means the growing connection and integration of countries around the world through the exchange of goods and services, investments, and even labor. In simple terms, it is when countries trade more with each other, invest with each other, and share economic activities on a global scale. For example is, when you buy an iPhone that's designed in the United States, assembled in China, and uses parts from Japan and Korea, that's economic globalization in action. It shows how many countries are working together to produce and trade goods. So the promise behind this idea is that through the close connection, through trade, investments, and labor movements, all countries can grow together. But according to Paul Streeton, which he calls this model globalization from above. So when Paul Streeton says from above, he is describing a kind of globalization that is dominated and controlled by rich countries and large corporations, those who already have the money, the power, and the influence. So in this system, the wealthy and powerful nations make most of the global economic rules, while the poorer and smaller countries have little choice but to follow them. In summary is, poor countries follow rules of rich countries. We have most important aspects of economic globalization according to Ford. And first aspect is breaking down of national economic barriers, meaning removing trade restrictions such as tariffs, import taxes, and quotas. It allows goods, services, and investments to move more freely between nations. The second aspect is the growth in trade. Because barriers are lowered, trade between countries have increased massively. Nations can buy and sell more goods and services to one another. Last aspect is key role and influence of transnational corporations and international financial institutions. These organizations have a big influence on global economic activities because they control huge amounts of money, investments, and trade policies. For example is companies like Apple, Samsung, and Toyota are transnational corporations. They operate in many countries, creating jobs and investments worldwide. However, their power also means they can influence government policies and economic decisions in smaller nations. So my question is, Mr. Basmayor, I have a question. So yun naman. So why do you think that the power of transnational corporations can influence government policies and economic decisions in smaller nations? Nganong maka-influence ang power sa transnational corporations sa government, sa decisions sa government? Oh, friend. Wala friend. Why do you think that the power of transnational corporations can influence government policies and economic decisions in smaller nations? Why do you think that the power of transnational corporations can influence government policies and economic decisions in smaller nations?
because they can contribute to the community development and budget to the government.
Alright, thank you so much. So, transnational corporations can influence policies and economic decisions in smaller nations because they have a lot of money and power. Kaya ang kanilang company manggod, maka-invest sila sa country, maka-create of jobs, and maka-help sa economy grow. So the government doesn't want to lose them. Because of that, the government might listen to what these companies want, like lowering taxes or changing rules to make business easier for them. We also have benefits of economic globalization is first, promotes economic efficiency, which means that countries are encouraged to focus on producing goods and services that they are best at. Kumbaga, sa Bisaya is kung asa ka haw, dira lang ka. Because when each country specializes in what it does best, trade between nations becomes smoother and more productive. Second benefit is expand opportunities for growth and development through open trade and investment. Businesses gain access to larger markets and more capital, which can lead to job creation and higher incomes. So, economic globalization has indeed brought in foreign investments and capital flows to developing countries, which in theory should help create jobs, boost production, and generate wealth. However, despite these capital inflows, the majority have not reached the people. This is the data from 1990 to 2002 that shows some concerning trends. So because of this data, we can say that benefits are uneven because global employment is 185.9 million and then 40% of the world's 6.5 million live in poverty and 59% of the global population lives in countries experiencing growth inequality. So with the data like this, maka-ask man what went wrong, right? So what went wrong is because they focus too much on profit to the point that they neglect the human rights, the equality, the inclusion, and even the environment. Critics argue that it has not worked fairly for all countries. One major reason is the unfair rules set by rich countries, meaning large corporations and wealthy nations gain the most, while ordinary citizens in developing countries often see little improvement in their living conditions. So this indicates that although wealth has increased on a global scale, it has been unevenly distributed. So we have challenging economic inequity. So how can the resources of the world be more fairly distributed? This is where we challenge the economic inequity at the global level. First is we need a new fair international system where trade and investment don't just focus on profit but also respect human dignity and protect the environment. According to Network 2005, globalization should serve people, not exploit them. Second is rich countries should open their market to poorer nations. This means allowing developing countries to sell their products more easily, helping them grow their economies. Third is developed countries should cancel or forgive debts of poorer nations because many developing countries spend most of their income paying debts instead of funding education or healthcare. Fourth is financial help should come as grants, not loans. So this means giving support without expecting repayment or harsh conditions that make poverty worse. Grants help nations recover without trapping them in more debt. Fifth is technology sharing should be encouraged because when rich countries share new technologies like in farming or renewable energy, poor countries can also innovate, grow faster, and become more self-sufficient. Lastly, at the global level is reduce monetary spending that free up a lot of money. We all know that could instead go to basic needs like housing, jobs, and education. So instead of investing in weapons, countries can invest in people's well-being. And national level is first, land reform should be carried out to give farmers ownership of the land. When farmers own the land, they become more motivated to work hard and improve production. So this also helps reduce rural poverty. Second is the government should increase funding for education because we all know that education is the great equalizer. It gives everyone, especially the poor, a fair chance of success. Third is credit and loan reform should make it easier for small and medium businesses to grow. Many small entrepreneurs struggle because they can't get loans from banks. If the government or private institutions give low-interest loans, small businesses can grow and create more local jobs. Fourth is skills and livelihood training programs should be provided to help people learn new trades and earn higher incomes. For example, in training programs in farming, digital skills or local crafts can help families start their own livelihoods and reduce unemployment. Fifth is progressive taxation should be applied, meaning the rich pay a higher percentage of taxes than the poor. This helps increase funds for public services and boost the purchasing power of lower income groups. Sixth is improving rural infrastructure, such as farm-to-market roads, storage facilities, and drying stations can help farmers to transport and sell their goods more efficiently. Seventh is decentralization should give local governments more power and resources. This allows them to directly address the needs of their communities. So for example, a local mayor can better respond to the needs of their town than the national government can from afar. Eight is transnational corporations should contribute to community development and protect the environment. So they must pay the right taxes, provide fair wages, and avoid corrupt practices. Lastly is reducing military spending since sa global level hapon na. And free up more money for essential services like education, healthcare, and social programs. So in conclusion, while economic globalization promises growth, progress, and connection among nations, its benefits are not always shared equally. So the system often favors the rich and powerful, leaving developing countries struggling to catch up. That's why it is important to challenge the economic inequality both globally and nationally, because true globalization should not only be about profit and power, it should be about people, fairness, and shared progress for all. And remember, in peace education, the goal that is sought is the maximization of well-being and not the maximization of profit.